Hi, my name is Josephine Atluri, and I'm so excited to be joining the Lovevery community today to be answering your questions on mental well-being. I am a provider with Robin, offering meditation and mindfulness coaching for people who are experiencing infertility as well as throughout motherhood. I myself am a mom of 5 children, having gone through IVF, international adoption, and surrogacy to create my modern day family. I am also the host of a podcast called Responding to Life, talking health, fertility, and parenthood. And today I'm so excited to be answering all the great questions that you submitted about miscarriage, postpartum depression, as well as how to juggle motherhood with little ones while being mindful. And I'll also go through the steps of how to incorporate meditation. So my littlest ones, they're 4-year-old twin boys. I totally understand the concern of motherhood feeling mundane, especially as you go through the day-to-day of life and we're all stuck at home because of quarantine. So here are my 3 tips on how to make motherhood feel much more fulfilling. The first is to take a time out and tag team with your partner for breaks. The second is to choose things to do with your kids that are fun for you versus the other way around. And then the third tip is to introduce some perspective and be mindful of the present moment. So take a time out if you're able to throughout the day, just for a few minutes here and there. It allows you to hit the reset button, and it allows you to refill that bucket of yours, because we all know that we can't give to other people if we're coming from a place of depletion. So we need to fill up that bucket again. And just little things of self-care, whatever works for you, do those things in few minute intervals so that you can come back feeling refreshed and nourished and ready to go with the kids. The second tip was to choose things that are fun for you. For example, for myself, I love to work out, I love to cook, I love to craft. So those are the things that I will always go to first with the kids, because I'll have fun doing those activities with them. And my joy and my experience and positivity will then make it fun for them. The third tip is to incorporate perspective and present moment mindfulness strategies. So if you think about the fact that the past is the past and the future isn't guaranteed, it gives you a whole new perspective on the present moment. You get to feel more positive about it and more grateful, and it shifts you from that state of things feeling so blah and mundane to feeling more fulfilled about what you're doing as a mom for your family in that moment. And then another way to incorporate perspective is to look at the joy that your kids are having through their eyes. I'll take a moment and I'll just look at my 4-year-old twins and see how much fun they're having up, climbing a tree. And it's just this pure joy that when I witness it in that present moment, it warms up my heart and it makes me feel fulfilled to be their mom. My husband and I went through many years of infertility, which encompassed IVF, international adoption, and surrogacy. We finally became pregnant with twins after doing IVF for a few years, only to lose them in the second trimester. So this next piece of advice on miscarriage comes from my personal experience, as well as the experience that I have coaching fertility mindfulness for many of my clients. The first bit of advice is to grieve the full expression of your emotions. Give yourself permission to really feel all of those feelings that bubble up for you versus trying to get through the moment quicker or trying to grieve the way you think people think you should grieve, or trying to just bury the feelings because it's just too scary to confront all of that. And it's important to do this because it allows you to move on to the other steps. But it's harder to do that if you've not really taken the time to really feel all of those feelings. So after you've given yourself permission and to be vulnerable to your emotions, the next important step is to pause and reflect. Often we feel like we need to rush back into life because, it's what people expect us to do. It's also easier to do. That way we don't have to confront all of our emotions. But I really encourage you to take this moment to take care of your mental and emotional well-being, and however that means for you, but also use the time to pause and reflect on what your next steps and what your journey looks like from here. Because oftentimes we just go through the motions and we keep doing what we think we should be doing without really taking the time to reevaluate where we are, both emotionally and also in terms of what other options we may have in trying to conceive. The next step is to stay as present as you can, because the past is the past and the future isn't guaranteed. By dwelling on the past so much, we think about all the things that, didn't go right. And then when we think about the future, there are all these what ifs, and it can be very overwhelming and stressful. So if we can, as much as possible, focus on what's in front of us, what's happening today, it takes away a lot of anxiety and allows us to be living in that moment. The next is to seek support, and support, whether that means your partner, close loved ones, your friends who are supporting you as you're trying to conceive, as well as mental well-being specialists, whether that's a therapist, a mindfulness coach, what have you. Always seek support when you feel like you need it and you feel like you need that extra shoulder to lean on. So I totally understand where you're coming from with this question, because after we experienced our second trimester loss, we did pivot to international adoption in order to welcome our first son home into our family. And after a year of enjoying him, we decided to try IVF again, which is how we became pregnant with twins. But I'll admit, every day of that pregnancy, I was miserable and riddled with fear and anxiety. So here are my 3 tips on how to curb that overwhelm, that fear, so that you can have moments where you enjoy your pregnancy. And the first is to exhaust all tests and opinions that you can get. And this requires you to be an advocate for yourself, because no one is going to push to get all of those tests done that you need to get answers. So, if you get unexplained loss, which is what I received as a diagnosis, then seek out other opinions from other doctors and seek out any other tests that you can possibly take. One of my dear friends is Dr. Amy, also known as the Egg Whisperer, and she offers such great advice on her website about all the different tests that you can pursue and ask your doctors to do in order to rule out any possible reasons for why this could have happened. So be an advocate for yourself, because no one else will do it, and seek out all those opinions. And hopefully you'll get some comfort. And that leads into the second tip, which is to then make a plan. And having a plan will help to ease some of that anxiety of getting pregnant again, because then you can feel like you're taking back control of your situation and working hand in hand with your doctors. And then the last tip for managing all of that fear with another possible pregnancy is to try and stay as present as possible. And, I mentioned this before about getting sort of caught up in the past and all of the things that you may have done wrong with that pregnancy, or all of the things that you could have avoided. And you can get caught in this rabbit hole of negativity and what if this and what if that. So by staying in the present moment and utilizing mindfulness strategies like meditation to keep you in this present moment, you take away a lot of the power from the past and from the overwhelm of the future, and can stay in this present moment and try to enjoy the pregnancy if you're in a subsequent pregnancy. So the pandemic and quarantine has made it really challenging for trying to get things done for yourself. And getting mental health support is definitely one of those things. But fortunately, telemedicine has become now very common with many practices. So I would explore the option of trying to do, FaceTime or Zoom or telephone appointments with your mental health specialist so that you can continue to get the support that you need. In terms of postpartum depression, there's something called baby blues that 70 to 80% of women experience right after giving birth that can last up to a couple of weeks. And then 10 to 20% of women actually experience postpartum depression, and this can happen anywhere up to a year after giving birth. So if you start to feel symptoms that are prolonged and lasting longer than a couple of weeks, then you should definitely speak to your OB-GYN so that he or she can advise you on next steps, whether that's speaking to a therapist or going on medication or doing both. In addition to seeking support via therapy and medication, there are things that you can do at home. So the first step would be to recognize what is triggering you and what is exacerbating the symptoms of your postpartum depression. It's great to keep a journal, and that way when you've identified them, then you can take the next step of figuring out how to shift your perspective when something on that list occurs to you. So it's a reframing of your perspective. But the first step with that is to get your body into a calmer state. So, as I've mentioned before, a way to do that is to take a deep breath. By taking a deep breath, just like I did right now, you're activating that sympathetic nervous system to shift over into your parasympathetic nervous system. So moving that fight or flight state into that rest and digest. And this helps bring you to a calmer frame of mind, so that way you can then employ your strategy for shifting your perspective and shifting your mindset. So what are some specific tools that can help you with postpartum depression? I'll list them out and then I'll go into each of them. So breathing techniques, mindset shifts via affirmations and gratitudes, seeking out support groups, whether they're in person, online, through social media groups, and then also using apps. There are a number of apps out there that help with shifting perspective and helping with depression and anxiety. And then finally, seeking support and help when you need it so that you can take a time out to take care of yourself. All important things. So that first one was breathing techniques. And I've mentioned them before. Moving yourself from a state of stress and into a state of calm can be done simply through using your breath, and your breath as your gateway to move you from that fight or flight state into that rest and digest. And a great way to do it right now is if we just focus on having that breath come from our belly. So breathing in, and as you breathe in, you're expanding that belly out, which is very contrary to what we're used to doing, which is sucking that belly in. But as you breathe in, push that belly out, and then you'll notice that when I can't fill in my belly anymore, it starts to move up into my chest. And then at that point, if you can no longer take in any more air, then start your exhale and do it just as slowly as you did your inhale, allowing the breath to release from your chest and then ending with a release from your belly. And this is called a deep belly breath. And this is super effective for really bringing yourself into that state of calm, where you'll start to notice, if you do breathing techniques like this, that you'll start to feel like your heartbeat is beating slower, your blood pressure is going down. If you found yourself getting hot when you were getting stressed out, your body temperature starts to cool down. So those are all physical signs that you are moving into a state of calm. And that was all because you just slowed down your breath. It's so amazing, but so effective, and can be done outside of a meditation in any situation. When you're caring for your newborn, when you're busy at work, when you're just sitting around and scrolling through media and start to get triggered and stressed. You can simply pull out that breathing technique, and there's so many different ones, and take control of how you're feeling. You've calmed your body via your breath. Now you're in a place where you can shift your mindset and shift from a perspective of negativity into one of positivity, into one of overwhelm, into one of more control and relaxation. A great way to do that is through the use of an affirmation. And if you swipe up, you can try out one of my video meditations that's specifically about affirmations. And an affirmation is just a simple phrase of support. And you can use that to move you from this negative state into one that is more positive. For example, I am healthy, I'm safe, I'm strong, versus when you're thinking that you're sick and that you can't do it and you're just feeling less than. So these affirmations will help boost your mood. Another great tool to use for a mindset shift is the use of gratitudes. You can swipe up to try out one of my video meditations that's called Cultivating a Gratitude Practice. And what's great about it is that if you practice it every day, just by calling to mind a few things that you're grateful for, doesn't have to be anything big, but what you're doing is you're practicing and you're flexing that muscle in your brain that allows you to look at a situation in life and look at your own sort of challenges from the lens of positivity and abundance versus the viewpoint of negativity and lack. And this really helps you when you're feeling down in the dumps, when you are experiencing anxiety and stress. You can then use that gratitude muscle that you've built up to look at life in a whole different way. And then other great ways to cope with postpartum depression would be through connecting with other women who are also in the same stage of motherhood that you are in. There are great online communities on Facebook, on Instagram, as well as apps like Peanut, where you can connect with other mothers. And then you can utilize as well different apps that help you with depression and anxiety and shifting one's mindset and perspective. A couple of ones that I've used are called Happify and Breathwork. They're great. And then the last thing I would mention is the use of support and knowing when to ask for help. So, asking for help from your partner, from family members, with your child, around the house, with the idea that you're using that time to rest, that you're using that time to take care of yourself with whatever self-care strategies work best for you. Because in those instances when you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed out, that can further trigger you into that state of depression and anxiety. So with the older kids, your toddler and your 5-year-old child, it's such a great way to be able to meditate whenever you can incorporate it into their schedules. So for example, if they take naps, I wish my kids still took naps. That's when I used to fit in my meditations, is as I was putting them to sleep. In fact, I do it as I'm putting my 4-year-olds to bed at night. I'll have music on and they'll know that we're going to meditate. And it's a great chance for them to sort of see how mommy is taking care of herself and prioritizing her well-being, and also how I utilize my breath to help calm me down. And then they're able to do it, when they're in the midst of a tantrum. I remind them of how they can use their meditation breath to help calm them down. And they're able to do it because they have seen me do it. So try and be creative as much as you can with the schedule that you have. So if you've never meditated before, it's not a problem. Along with using the free video meditations that I have on my YouTube channel, there's a method that I call be time. And what that means is just that you're trying to be like time, which is just fleeting. And you have to be present in that moment, and then it's gone. It's not the past and it's not the future. It's just right now. So each letter stands for something, and it reminds you of how to incorporate meditation. B is your body, relaxing it as much as possible. E is your environment, just finding a quiet space. Doesn't have to be a perfect sort of Zen spot. And then the T stands for your thoughts. Know that you will have thoughts and it's completely okay. I is for your inhale. Make sure it's long and slow. M is for your mantra. Use something like an affirmation, like I'm strong or be here now, which is my favorite. And E is for exhale. Do it long and slowly. I totally understand this question. After experiencing that loss and then getting pregnant, I didn't feel the way I thought I would feel. I was a bundle of stress and worry. And so my advice, three tips on how to shift over when you're feeling not so excited about being pregnant. And the first is to not feel guilty about your feelings. We oftentimes feel like we should feel a certain way because of what society is dictating, but you are the master of yourself. And so you need to feel however you want to feel about your experience, because everyone's experience and journey is different. And by suppressing the feelings that you have, you're creating guilt, you're creating resentment. So rather, give yourself permission and be vulnerable, as I've mentioned before, to really own the full expression of what you're feeling and allow whatever is bubbling up to come to the surface rather than burying it inside. Because whether or not you believe it, it will manifest itself in other ways in the future. Maybe not right now, but in other ways. So it's really important to just let it out and not feel guilty about it, to give yourself some grace and some kindness. The second is to come up with a plan. And, if you're feeling overwhelmed about having another child and they're very close in age and that seems overwhelming to you, then try to come up with a plan with your partner or with loved ones on how you can manage this in terms of how it will fit into your daily schedule, how it will fit into your work life, whatever it is. Coming up with a plan really empowers you and helps you feel like you're taking back control of your situation. And the last tip is to manage your stress. So if you're not feeling excited about this next pregnancy because you already have a little one, a lot of times that's coming from stress because of the uncertainty of the situation and how it's going to play out once you have the second child. And so now is a great time to utilize and build up your self-care toolkit by coming up with new strategies that will help you to feel better and to take care of your mental and emotional well-being. And that way, once your second child comes around, you'll have these tried and true methods of self-care techniques, and not just mindfulness and meditation, but other things too, like, that taking a walk feels good for you, or reading a book, or even just sitting in your bed for a couple of minutes will just make you feel better. So practice those now and use them often so that you don't feel so overwhelmed and stressed and so worried about this next pregnancy. Thank you so much for joining me today. It has been my absolute pleasure to answer all of your questions on miscarriage, postpartum depression, and mothering mindfully. If you are in need of any extra support, I'd love to work with you. You can do so by swiping up to book with me via the Robin Network, where I offer meditation and mindfulness coaching, as well as teaching stress management techniques for those who are trying to conceive and those who are currently on their motherhood journey. And I'd love for you also to check out my website, jatluri.com, where I offer free video meditations, as well as other tips on meditation, how to get started, as well as incorporating into your motherhood. And feel free to check out the article that I wrote on Robin by swiping up on my journey specifically with adoption and surrogacy. Thank you so much again for this opportunity.